You're born into a game, not one you chose, not one you agreed to. And if you're watching this, chances are you're not winning it. But someone is. They're not smarter, they're not stronger, and they're definitely not more deserving. They just knew something you didn't. The rules were written by people who never intended for you to win. From the outside, it looks like luck, privilege, maybe talent. But dig deeper, and what you find is more engineered than accidental. This is a system, one designed to preserve wealth, power, and control at the top. And it's been working flawlessly since the days of Aristotle. Now, Aristotle wasn't a revolutionary. He didn't storm palaces or burn cities. But what he understood, what he warned about, was the natural decay of democracies into oligarchies. And the terrifying part, he said it would happen quietly. In his view, every system of government eventually turns into its own opposite. Democracy promises rule by the many, but over time, power consolidates. The rich begin to shape laws in their favor. The state stops serving the people and starts protecting the wealth of a few. Sound familiar? You work harder. You learn the rules, you try to play fair. But somehow, you're still stuck, renting everything, saving nothing, running just to stay in place. Meanwhile, a small class at the top keeps multiplying their wealth at a scale that doesn't even look real anymore. Private islands, corporate bailouts, tax loopholes you'll never even see, let alone use. And here's the thing, they don't have to break the system. They are the system. Let's rewind. Aristotle believed in a concept called eudaimonia, a kind of flourishing that comes not from pleasure, but from purpose. A meaningful life required participation in public life, debate, virtue, responsibility. But that only worked if citizens were equal, at least in how society treated them. Once wealth started to distort that equality, everything else began to rot. You stopped getting real choices. Politicians serve donors, not voters. Media keeps you distracted with outrage, not informed with truth. And education? It prepares you to obey, not to question. This isn't conspiracy. This is structure. Think about the phrase, the rich get richer. That's not philosophy, that's compound interest, tax incentives, and capital gains laws. If you have money, the system builds you a ladder. If you don't, it hands you a treadmill. And then comes the narrative, the myth you're taught to believe, that it's your fault, that if you just worked harder, got the right degree, woke up earlier, you'd be on top too. But who built the ladder? And who keeps moving the bottom rungs further apart? In ancient Athens, Aristotle watched the early cracks form in what was considered a revolutionary experiment in democracy. He saw how wealth slowly began to influence the courts, how public debate shifted from truth to rhetoric, how leadership stopped being about wisdom and started being about charisma and control. He didn't say it would end in fire. He said it would end in comfort, quiet obedience. The most perfect political community, he wrote, is one in which the middle class is in control. But what happens when that middle class disappears? You already know. It starts small. Housing gets out of reach. Healthcare becomes a gamble. Education is a debt trap. But you're told everything's fine. You're told this is normal. That progress means tech billionaires racing to colonize Mars, while you can't afford eggs. And while you're fighting over minimum wage or student loans, they're lobbying for tax cuts that dwarf your lifetime income. Now ask yourself, if you wanted to keep people from noticing this, what would you do? You wouldn't censor them, that's too obvious. You'd distract them, entertain them, exhaust them with constant noise. You'd create a culture that worships luxury but shames poverty, that celebrates hustle while punishing rest, that rewards compliance and labels skepticism as dangerous. And most importantly, you'd convince people that anyone can make it, as long as they don't question the game. So we idolize the few who made it, tech founders, celebrity entrepreneurs, while ignoring the millions who never had a shot. And instead of examining the system, we blame ourselves. This is how oligarchies survive in plain sight. They don't just control the money, they control the narrative. And here's where it gets darker. Because even if you do make it, if you climb your way up against the odds, the system doesn't change. It just recruits you. You become part of the machinery. You buy silence, you protect your slice. And suddenly you're the one writing the rules. But this isn't about envy. It's about architecture. Aristotle warned that when wealth and power concentrate without limits, they corrupt the foundation of any society. Not suddenly, not violently, slowly, legally, through policy and persuasion, not brute force, until eventually the people forget what fairness ever looked like. And that's where we are. We've normalized a world where 8 people can own more wealth than half the planet, where public resources are gutted while private profits soar, where billionaires frame themselves as saviors, while workers beg for livable wages. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one policy, one loophole, one distraction at a time. Think of politics today. Who really sets the agenda? The voters or the donors? The corporations that spend millions on lobbying, campaign financing, and influence. They don't just nudge laws. They write them and then market them as common sense. When Aristotle studied the transitions of governments, he described the stages. Monarchies become tyrannies. Aristocracies become oligarchies. Democracies? They become something else entirely, when freedom is reduced to branding and civic life becomes performance. In that stage, participation feels like a ritual. You vote, you post, you complain. But nothing changes, because the mechanisms of real power are insulated, hidden in boardrooms, offshore accounts, and legal fine print. And here's the brutal part, that insulation is exactly what the system is designed to protect. Not your voice, not your rights, but the illusion that they still matter. Even protest has been absorbed. Corporations slap slogans on packaging. Politicians echo movements they never believed in. Everything becomes marketable, even dissent. Because once the outrage cycle is monetized, it's defanged. And that leaves you, the individual, exhausted. You scroll, you cope, you chase the next productivity hack, but deep down, you feel it. The weight of a game you never asked to play, where every rule was written by someone who already won. Aristotle believed that if we forgot the purpose of politics, human flourishing, it would decay into a theater of power, where language becomes noise, where action becomes marketing, where justice becomes branding. Sound familiar? And now here's the most dangerous part. The system doesn't need you to agree. It just needs you to adapt, to get used to it, to believe that this is just the way things are. Because once that belief sets in, it doesn't matter who's in office. The machine runs itself. That's why the rich always win. Because they're not reacting to the system. They're refining it. They're investing in its future. Buying influence, shaping culture, designing incentives, while most people are busy surviving. This isn't about conspiracy. It's about infrastructure, and Aristotle saw it coming centuries ago. A slow erosion of civic integrity replaced by oligarchic control wearing a democratic mask. So, what do you do in a world like that? That's the hardest question. Because rebellion isn't convenient, and awakening isn't comfortable. But maybe, just maybe, it starts with recognizing that the ladder you've been climbing leads nowhere. That the game wasn't broken, it was rigged from the start. And if that's true, then real power might begin with one quiet refusal. Stop playing by the rules they gave you. Not blindly, not angrily, but consciously. Because until you understand the system, you'll keep blaming yourself for its outcomes. And that's exactly what they want.